And to do that, you got to add a stalwart there. So outside the box ideas, mostly for third base, because I'm assuming the Mariners are going to want thump there, and you're more likely to find that thump at third base than you are certainly at second base, especially with Marcus Semien now off the market. Who you got for third base, Joe, that might be able to bring the thump? Now, again, if you're listening to this, remember, these are outside the box. These are not going to be like, oh yeah, that guy's a badass. This is going to be like, okay. It's like, I could see him like getting back to form or breaking through, or here's what he did in 80 games a couple of years ago, but hasn't got back. Guys that have something to offer that could be better players if put in the right situation. I think pretty much that's what we're talking about. Is it not?
Yeah, definitely. There's two guys that stick out to me if we're talking extremely outside of the box. The first one would be if Seattle comes up short in the Chris Bryant sweepstakes, and they come up short in general with their infield plans and goals. Mm-hmm. What about Adalberto Mondesi out of Kansas City? He's got third base, plenty of third base experience, and he might be getting pushed out of that infield with Nicky Lopez and Bobby Witt and Whit Merrifield and, name your combos. He's got 5 years of service time, maybe 4 years of service time. He's going to be a free agent in 2 years. He's got 2 more years of control.
Yep.
Yeah. So he's got versatility. He can play third base. I think he's still scratching the surface of what he's capable of offensively. Best year was 2019, 2018, depending on how you look at value. 14 home runs, 24, 43, 32 stolen bases. So if you go get Mondesi, not only do you get a guy that can play third base, for an extended period, can play it 100 times if he stays healthy. You all of a sudden have a really dynamic infield with J.P. Crawford and Mondesi and Adam Frazier and some guys that can really steal some bases with Dylan Moore on the bench. So I think he's an interesting fit. I don't know what the cost would be. Kansas City is, famous at this point for asking for the moon.
Yep.
So he's an interesting one. I think the other one that you have to look at is Philadelphia. If they're the ones that land Chris Bryant, and Philadelphia has been extremely quiet on the free agent market, and I don't think that lasts forever. If they land Chris Bryant, I think Alec Boehm is an interesting piece that you can go out and try and acquire. He's going to have 5 or 6 years of control. So the cost is not going to be cheap, but you got to believe in the bat. It's a bit of a down year last year, but he by no means bottomed out. And I love the physical tools. He's a fringe average defender at third base. If Perry Hill can figure that out and you believe in the bat, I think that's a fun project to take on that really fits the entire length of the window.
Yeah, it really is. I think Skip AAA, went to the big leagues in 2020, played 44 games. I'm pulling it up here. Hit 338, 400, 481 with 4 home runs in those 180 plate appearances. And then in 115 games last year, really struggled to hit for average was really it.
Mm-hmm.
The power didn't come either, but it was really just about, struggling to hit for average. So
sophomore slump.
You're getting a guy that is 25, won't be 26 till August. He's a right-handed guy. He's a big guy, 6'5", 220, 225. And it wasn't like he was terrible at third, right? I mean, he was fine. Like, kind of about what you'd be getting from Seager in overall value the next couple of years, considering Seager's trend. The questions I would have on Baum is the bat just not quick enough? But there are ways to get around that too. You don't have to have lightning quick bat speed to have success at the big league level. Not every hitter we watch, one of the most famous, pure hitters in the game right now, just not guys. Michael Brantley, people talk about what a professional hitter Michael Brantley is. He does not have great bat speed. He doesn't. It's maybe about league average, but the swing is pretty short. It's sound. There are no extra movements. It's direct to the ball. You can do things and still put up pretty decent numbers at the big league level without great bat speed. I mean, we were just talking about Kyle Seager. Well, I think he had at least average, maybe above average bat speed in his prime. The swing was always a little long too, so he had to make up for that with bat. There are lots of ways to get to good velocity, and he really struggled with that. Baum did in 2021, but yeah, he's an interesting one. So I know you've got another one or two, but let me throw one out there that I've actually mentioned before on the show, and it kind of goes hand in hand with the Moustakas conversation, and that's Eugenio Suarez, who played a lot of shortstop early last year for the Reds, but he belongs at third base. Again, not a great defender. He's fringy, But this is a guy who we're talking about. I mean, he's not making a ton of money. He signed through 2024 with a 2025 club option with an AAV of under $10 million total, who hit 49 home runs in 2019, 34 in 2018. And just since the 2020 season was pushed back, he's just really struggled. He did hit 31 home runs this past season, but he hit under 200, no OBP, just like everything just went down. His walk rate went down a little bit. Strikeout rate kept going up a little bit. Like maybe the bat's just slowing down. But again, 30 years old, he's a right-handed bat, can at least manage at third base a little bit like Baum there. Like he's not going to kill you. Maybe that's somebody that you go to the Reds about and say, hey, we need a solution at third base. You're trying to get a little younger, a little more athletic, and to stock your farm system a little bit. Can we match up here? That's just one that I thought of.
I like Suarez. I think he is an interesting acquisition in that at his best, he can flirt with getting MVP votes, but at his worst, you've got 4 years of like $50 million that would be committed to him. And his worst has been really bad. It's a really variable, kind of a volatile profile. So I would be interested to see what the prospect cost would be to get someone like Suarez, because he still has, if you're playing it the Reds way, definitive positive value. Like he's not a throw-in to get rid of the cap. But yeah, I think coupling him with a Sonny Gray or a Tyler Mahle for an Emerson Hancock type of package makes a lot of sense for the Reds. And it might take a little bit more than Hancock, but
he's actually owed just $35 million guaranteed. It's an $11 million salary each of the next 3 years and a $2 million buyout for 2025, making it $35 million. Is
that a team option?
It is a club option for $15 million.
Okay. So that makes me feel a little bit better. And I think he's still like 30, so he's not 30, old by any means.
Yep.
Maybe moving him back to third base gets him more comfortable. But man, he's one of the most dynamic forces in baseball in 2018 and 2019. I'm really surprised that the Reds broke him by moving him to shortstop. Not terribly surprised they broke him.
Kind of does seem
surprised they moved him.
There's no third baseman. If you consider Suarez a third baseman, even though he spent some time at shortstop, there's no third baseman in Major League Baseball since the start of the 2019 season. Now, let me preface this by saying this includes the 2 seasons that Suarez has been at his very worst, but there's no third baseman in Major League Baseball since the start of the 2019 season that has more home runs than Eugenio Suarez. 95. He has 12 more than Nolan Arenado. That's crazy.
Yeah, that is crazy. I'm trying to think if there's a third base left-handed hitting option out there that makes sense that isn't named Kyle Seager. Like I keep going to Kevin Biggio. We haven't talked about Kevin Biggio too much, but man, that would be fun.
I don't know. Ryan McMahon is a guy that I've always liked.
Sure. Yeah. And always liked is important because you think Ryan McMahon has 5 years of control left, but somehow Ryan McMahon has over 4 years of service time.
Right.
He's got 2 years left, which is unbelievable to me.
And he's very good at third base. Spent last year playing almost exclusively third base. And yes, it's Coors. He was 254, 331, 449 with 23 homers. It's even though those numbers sound okay, Coors makes that a slightly below average overall season. But I still like the player, and I still think there's some upside there. He's 26 years old. He struggles a little bit against lefties, but it's not so bad where you just have to rip him out of the lineup and totally go platoon,
especially with the versatility Seattle has.
Yeah, and because he's played second base and because he's played first base, he might be the closest thing to a left-handed Chris Bryant that there is, even though McMahon hasn't played a lot of outfield. Against lefties, in his career, he's about 5% worse than he is against righties, but he really broke through last year. And if he continues that trend, he might actually have something there. So that's a guy that certainly interests me. I'm not sure how outside the box Ryan McMahon actually is. But as you were saying that, I thought left-handed hitting third baseman. How about Ryan McMahon? But you got a couple more, and there's got one of these guys has to be in New York.
Yeah, there's a couple of guys in New York. I mean, Gio Urshela certainly comes up.
That's right.
If New York decides to upgrade their infield, which there's a million ways that they could do it, especially if they go out and they acquire a second baseman and they want to move Glaber around, or maybe Glaber is the option. But Gio Urshela, Glaber Torres, I think make a lot of sense. I have no idea what the cost would be. I mean, it feels like Urshela would be an excessive value that they'd have to pay for. And Glaber, I'm just not comfortable putting at third base. He
Yeah,
can't play shortstop. I don't know why you play him at third base.
especially to go with the fact that you don't know that he's going to hit. Like if you knew he was going to mash, you might live with whatever he gives you at third base, but there's certainly a lot of questions about that. Urshela, by the way, peaked in 2019. He's 30 years old. He just turned 30. He's got 2 years left until free agency. 2019, he was really, really good. 314, 355, 534 with 21 home runs in 132 games. Was pretty good the next year as well in a reduced season. Played 43 of the 60 games and put up a WRC plus of 133. And then he was okay. He was a little bit below average this past year, but he was battling injuries. He was hurt. Had a tough time getting back in the lineup. He doesn't walk a lot, but he also doesn't strike out a ton. I mean, it was up to 25% this year, but that was the first time since 2018 that he'd struck out more than 18% of the time. So in that way, he kind of helps the Mariners answer some of those let's make a bunch of contact questions. I think the big thing is the last 3 seasons, he's really chased outside the zone. And there's a little bit of a history there of him expanding the zone quite a bit. But unlike Javier Baez, who we talked about in the Robbie Ray episode earlier on Monday, Joe, his out of zone contact, Gio Urshela, is 67, 68, 70%. With Baez, we were in the 50s. So when you chase 47% of the time and your contact rate on those is about half, you are in big, big trouble, my friend. So Urshela's got that going for him, at least over Javier Baez. Is there anybody else that comes to mind that's a little bit out of outside the box? If the Mariners do strike out, they're going to need to do something. Have we covered them all, or you got another one?
The only other one that really comes to mind that hits left-handed as well would be Jonathan Villar, and he played a ton of third base last year for the Mets. So I think he's a name that you have to explore. I think he makes a lot of sense for the team, and that he can play all over the infield if you don't get Chris Taylor or you don't get Trevor Story. So I think he would be a pretty interesting name to watch out for. He's a free agent too, so you don't have to expend resources on him.
And he's 30, I think 31 in May. Has played a lot of second, short, probably fits best at third at this point in his career, but certainly could spell at those other spots. When you look at splits, he's better as a righty. But maybe that's when Abraham Toro gets his time at third base, if you have to put some kind of a timeshare. Managers don't like to use platoon anymore, which I think is hilarious, but if there's some sort of timeshare that you could do worse in that situation. So before we move on to pitching here,